Hi, everyone. Welcome to Long Game, a Heated Rivalry podcast. My name is Silvan, and Declan isn't here today, but in Declan's place, I've got a very special guest joining me. I've got Alicia, who is one of our book club members and longtime listeners joining me, and we're going to be talking about the Heated Rivalry book, Part 5. So thank you so much for joining me, Alicia.
No, thank you for having me. This is amazing. I mean, I've never dreamed to be in a podcast before, so it's great. Thank you.
Well, you're filling in for Declan today, who couldn't be here with us. And so we are just so appreciative that you were able to step in because you've been one of our listeners from the beginning, and you're so active on our Fable book club. So it's obviously it's so lovely to be able to meet people who are sort of contributing to the community. So thank you.
No, thank you guys for all your work, and it's been amazing this uh, journey with you, the podcast, and of course the book club. We have met lots of interesting people. It's an interesting crowd. We do some meetings every week. We are like friends now.
Yeah, and it's been so lovely to sort of watch it grow. And you really do get a sense of community now. Like, you guys are all posting and sharing links and book recommendations and fanfics. And like you said, you host your own sort of Zoom meetings independent of us. And that's
Mm.
been lovely to just jump in and crash your Zoom meetings sometimes. And it also puts sort of faces to names in a way. But
Yeah.
I'm wondering, Alicia, what, how did you get involved, or how did you find out about Heated Rivalry?
So I guess through Instagram, lots of people that I follow, like they recommend TV shows and stuff, they started talking about it like at the end of last year, maybe. And it was something that I wanted to watch, but I didn't have the streaming service that they were it's on here in Spain. So I was like, well, at some point I'm gonna watch it. But then the Olympics came, the Winter Olympics. My daughter was starting to watch lots of hockey, and I was like, I'm watching these games. I'm gonna like look for the TV show that everybody's talking about. So I signed up for the streaming service, and I started to watch it. And it was like in 2 days I watched the 6 episodes, and it was crazy, and I had to watch it again like right after I finished it. And then I was like, why is this based on a novel? I checked it up, and then I went to and I started reading the novels, and it's like, well, blown out of proportion.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So, in a similar way, I was very similar. I watched the TV show first, and then I started reading the books. But I know in the book club, you guys have all finished all of the books. And in fact, you've moved on to different books whilst I'm still reading Heated Rivalry. So
Yeah.
it's been interesting to watch some of the discussions, but avoid some of the spoilers as well.
Well, because Fable is really great. You can like see discuss the lobby stuff and not get into the chapters, which is good for the people, and then you can go like little by little at your
Yeah,
own speed.
which is why it works for me so well. So, where we left off in the last episode was the introduction of the infamous Rose character. Now, I love Rose. I love everything she stands for. I love what she does for the storyline. But we're going to carry on from chapter 15.
Yes.
So, in chapter 15, this is where we get the conversation between Rose and Shane's coming out. And so, before we get into very specifics, because you know I like to dissect the language, what were your general impressions of this chapter?
So I love the chapter. I kept listening to the voice of the actress, Sophie Nellis.
Yeah.
I when I was reading the dialogues, I was like, this is her for sure. And yeah, no, I loved it.
Yeah. And so, in a similar way, like, I can really hear Sophie's voice as Rose. Like, she's just become the character for me in the
Yeah.
same way. It sounds like we're both very similar in that regards. So, one of the things that struck me in this chapter was the way sex is described between Shane and Rose. And it felt so different when it was written in comparison to the TV show for me. So, for example, one of the lines from the first page in chapter 15, in fact, is which made it more difficult for him to perform. But she had been patient and helpful, and he'd completed the task both times. Now, I don't know how it feels
I
like for
also
you,
highlighted that.
right? It just feels like it's a job for him to do rather than something that he enjoys. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, it's totally that. I wrote it, the task at hand. It's horrible. It you read it, it's like I don't know, 100 years old conversation of like a queer guy that has to be with a woman because he has to and he has to perform when he's not happy at all, and his brain is not there for sure, and nor is his body. So yes, I thought it was so sad.
Right, it is sad because you're right. It's almost like how people might have been expected to perform like way, way before. And in a way, it contrasts so much with the sex scenes that we see Shane and Ilya having,
Yeah,
and where it's
exactly.
descriptive and it's hot.
Yeah, totally. It doesn't have anything to do with that. This is like like a chore that he has. Like he has to do this. He has to perform. And well, of course, we don't know her like her side of the story, so we don't know what she's thinking. But his point of view is like this is like a terrible thing that I have to do to like make this and or to perform this task.
Completely agree. And I think for me, what this chapter gave me is, for me, it was actually really similar to the TV show in some ways, because
Yeah.
when we get to the scene in the TV show where they sit down at the restaurant together, I looked at the book and I made notes and I'm like, the dialogue in that exchange is almost word for word lifted from the book.
Yes.
I wasn't expecting that.
Totally. Yeah, that's why I'm saying sometimes I don't listen the voices of the actors, but in this particular case, I was listening to her because it's word by word what they said in the TV show.
Completely. And even some of the jokes are exactly the same. Like when, it's been described like wear a square peg in a round hole kind of thing. Or when even Shane says, I kind of prefer to be the hole than the peg.
Yeah,
Again, lifted.
I loved that conversation, and I loved the geometrics of the example.
Was there anything that you got from the book chapter that you didn't get from the TV show, or vice versa?
Well, I love that he describes her, and he says that she likes to ask questions and she's really interested in the answers. And I know that we have said that the author has said that he's an autistic person, but I think he's also very introvert because I'm sort of introvert too. And this is such a comfort when you are talking to someone that asks you questions and then is interested in your answers. And I think that's the connection they have, like the really good connection that he clicks with her, and I think it's because of that.
So it sounds like you really relate to character to Shane because you're
Ye-
both introverts in a way.
yeah, yeah, totally. When I was reading that, I was like, of course, that's why he felt so safe with her, because she's like this. And in the TV show you can tell that as well, because when they met, she starts asking about him when he was little, when he started playing hockey and all that, and you can get this connection as well. But here in the beginning of this chapter, it's he talks about that as well.
I think you're right. I think one of the things that definitely comes across is this sense of safety. And I think that allows both of these characters to have that conversation because, I don't think you'd be able to come out to somebody if you didn't feel safe or secure with them,
Yeah,
because
that's for sure.
it's such an anxiety provoking situation and it just wouldn't have happened, I think, with any other character but Rose, I think.
Yeah, for sure. And she's so sweet the way she says the things, and when she thinks she's not saying them. right, she's like, let me go the other way. Yeah, she's really, really nice.
Yeah, there's a perception that she has that, where she's constantly thinking, I'm not doing this right. Let me try that again.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And for me in this chapter, I think one of the biggest differences after the coming out scene was we get the introduction of Svetlana in this chapter. Who I think is, am I correct?
Yes, yes, because yeah, my following notes are about Svetlana.
Okay. I'm so not paranoid, I'm so worried sometimes because, and I have to thank some of the listeners from the previous episode. So, because I got the timeline wrong
Yeah,
from with Shane and Rose getting together and then breaking up. So, I want to thank some of the listeners who left comments and wrote in and corrected me because I genuinely wasn't sure. So, it was really nice to have that feedback, and it was very immediate feedback. So, I'm always very worried about saying something, and I'm like, have I got this right or not? But you're right. This is our first introduction to Svetlana as a character. And for me, the way Svetlana is described is she has blue eyes, long straight hair, and is blonde.
yeah. This is my note here about
Tell
that.
me what you were thinking there.
Well, of course, I loved that they changed her in the TV show. I mean, I've met, I have several Russian lab mates, co-workers, and they come in all different colors. So I'm really glad that they changed her because she's a much better, more interesting character and in the TV show. So yes, I wrote that. Like she's blonde, super blonde, like blue eyes. She has like the typical what you would expect a Russian to be, but no, there are so many different like phenotypes of Russians.
Totally. And I think when you say that, even, I was thinking about how she made Scott in Game Changer blonde as well. And it immediately pulled me back to that.
Yeah. Well, I guess just stick to the things that you know, and probably most of the hockey players, which I don't know much about it, but most of Canadian hockey players are white
Mhm.
and blonde, probably. So yeah, but I think the casting have done an excellent job in changing and doing some inclusion of different backgrounds.
Definitely, because you see the actress who plays Svetlana, Senya, I think is how you pronounce it. Again, if I'm pronouncing this differently, please tell me.
I don't know.
But she is a gorgeous, gorgeous person. She's got this sort of brown, blondish, sort of really thick, curly hair. She's obviously darker skinned, and she's not that typical sort of blonde character that's
No.
described in the
Yeah.
book. So I think you're right. I think the casting does such a good job at maybe taking elements of the character from the book, but really making the character in the TV show. It almost feels like an independent character from the book.
Yeah, totally. Totally. It has it has the same name. It has similar things like she's also the daughter of a goaltender from Russia from the national team. And he probably played also in a North American team for sure because she was born in the US. And I also love, and this is similar both in the books and in the TV show, that she knows lots about hockey. I love that because this is not the only woman in the books that knows about hockey. We can talk about that later, but she does knows a lot, and that's great because she's a woman and she knows about sports and she knows for sure about hockey.
Yeah, no, let's talk
Actually,
about.
Elia says that she knows more than him. So
Yeah. Do you think, because I haven't played sports like professional, like team sports in a really long while. And I don't tend, the only sport that I watch now is tennis mainly around sort of like the US Open and Wimbledon and things like that, but I don't play tennis anymore. Do you think there's a different level of perception that you get as a fan of a sport when you're removed from playing the sport?
mm, yeah, I think so. Probably. I haven't ever played in a team sport. I used to do swimming. That's all my sport. But my daughter, she plays inline hockey, which is similar in a way, but totally different because it's not violent. And I'm glad that it's that way. And I know perfectly well that that we are watching like the families. We are fan of the team, and we when we talk to her afterwards, her point of view is totally different to what we think is happening on the rink and in the game. So yes, definitely.
So do you think as a family, because your daughter's playing the game, your whole family sort of gathers around it and like learns the game with her without having to play it?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I didn't know anything about hockey, and now I know all the rules, all the teams, and what they play, the position they play in. So that's for sure what happened with Svetlana here. She's the daughter of a player, and she grew up with this, and that's why she has all this knowledge for sure. Because I mean, she's surrounded by hockey and people talking about hockey. And yes, I guess those different point of view are important, like the players that are actually playing, but also the people that can watch it from afar.
Yeah, absolutely. And they even, in the book, Rachel Reed goes into how Ilya met Svetlana 3 years ago. So they're new friends, really.
Yeah,
And for me, I think she sold him a car or something like that in Boston, or she was,
Lamborghini.
I mean, of course, it's Ilya. But and I really appreciate the change that they made, and it must have been a very conscious change that they made for the TV show, making Svetlana a childhood friend, someone who, who's grown up with Ilya. And I think for me, what that did was it gave Ilya an anchor.
Yeah,
It gave Ilya almost a what we call in attachment theory, like a secure base, or a base rather, maybe not secure,
yeah,
for and a tether, because Ilya does go off the rails a lot. He travels so much, and I feel like in the TV show, Svetlana is that base for him to come back to.
yeah. That's for sure. And otherwise, he would be really lonely, right? Like living abroad in a different continent, all by himself since the sweet age of 17.
Mm.
That's a lot. So yeah, I'm glad that they corrected that, and then that he has that figure to go back to and talk and feel accompanied.
Yeah. And you talked about sort of other women in the book, sort of having this really expansive knowledge of hockey. I wonder if you could go into that a bit more.
Yeah, well, I have notes here, and you can tell that Yuna's Shane's mother also knows lots about hockey, and we might discuss this later in one of the following chapters. But she also tells him this is gonna happen, and he's like, "How did you know that?" Again, because she has watched a lot of hockey and she knows. They even say that she has a sex sense about it, but it's 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 only because she knows a lot and she has watched it a lot, like Svetlana.
Yeah, I think it's important that the women's knowledge here is really uplifted, and it's almost revered and celebrated. The women in
Yeah,
these stories are not side characters with no ambition or no sort of growth or development themselves. They really see, I can see them really holding their own in this story. And I think without some of these really strong female protagonists, it doesn't allow the male characters to then grow and develop the story.
for sure. Yeah, that's for sure. And in the TV show, they also make Rose. So also Rose also knows her hockey, because she has two or three elder brothers that play hockey and stuff. So it also is, I think it makes them like equal partners, like they can talk to each other. It's not like a woman that has totally different interests that cannot see eye to eye to these guys whose lives is completely around hockey. Like, so I think that that's why these characters are so like well matched to them.
You're right, because they could have easily fallen under the trope of like a girlfriend or a wife or a mother who has no interest in hockey, has no knowledge of it, and is very separate. Because you see those in lots of TV shows and movies, like the number
Yeah.
of times you've seen them, and it's a stereotype. And
Yeah.
I'm glad that Rachel Reed went against that and really lent into actually, yes, the men play the hockey, but the women know the hockey better.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's because she loves hockey and she knows a lot about hockey and she follows the league and everything. So I think she's like reflecting her in these characters. That's my idea.
No, that's such a good point. I hadn't really considered how much of a fan Rachel Reed must be of hockey.
She is.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I like a lot the math reference that Rose's the point of Rose when she says that a problem is something that you can solve. Like not in a daily life. Like a problem in a daily life is not necessarily something that you can solve. But in a math point of view, problems so say that something that definitely has a solution. And I love that reference. And then when she says that you might be like Miles, well, in the book, he answers and says, well, I'm not sure if I'm exactly like Miles. He's at this point still deflecting. He's still saying, no, I don't think I'm gay. So that's interesting. This time when I read it, I was like, I didn't pick on that before. That when
Yeah.
he was talking to Rose, he still wasn't sure.
That's such a good point. I didn't really pick up on that in the same way, but I'm glad you said that because yeah, you're right. In a way, he doesn't really identify with Miles because maybe on some level he doesn't think he's like he hasn't fully come to the realization that he might be gay.
Yeah. He's just coming to that realization while he speaks to Rose. So he's still saying, well, I might not be 100% gay. I might be, I don't know, 60% gay or 80% gay. I'm not totally like Miles.
Well, yeah, because I imagine for someone like Shane, he's still holding on to this idea that he still could be with a woman, and Rose for him was that person that he could be with, he could build a life with, he could have kids with, for
Yeah.
example.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. Yeah. That's what he says, that she's perfect, that she was perfect for him. But if she cannot have this relationship with a perfect match, well, there won't be other one.
No, I like that you brought us back to that specifically because I was listening to, I think, the Shelf Aware podcast with Ren and Lizzie, and they were talking about how that line was specifically worded as well. Again, please feel free to correct me, anyone who's listening. But I feel like in the TV show, Rose says something along the lines of, a problem is something you can fix or something like that. Whereas in the book, it says a problem is something that you can solve. I really like the book version.
Yeah, definitely. It's perfect. As I said, it's scientific. It's a problem is something that you can solve, like a mathematical problem that has a solution. The part where she says that the round peg doesn't fit in a square hole. I don't understand why in the book they said she says no, Rose, forget I said that, and in the TV show she also corrects herself and says no, forget I said that. I don't understand what is the problem because to me, these are two different geometrical shapes that, of course, don't fit one into another.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think I really like that you're coming at this scene from a very mathematical perspective, which is so, says so much of your background because I know you
Yeah.
teach and you're a scientist, so that makes sense. I think for me, what I got is, one doesn't fit in the other. And I think, I don't know if they're taking it quite literally, which is why it's like, ooh, gross,
Yeah,
or that
but
might be painful.
probably.
I don't know. That's the way I took it, but I like your take on that. Actually, it's really interesting.
Uh, so the thing is that it's a really good example. So I don't understand why she says gross because you get it when she says it.
And you're so right because whilst we're having this conversation about Shane coming to this realization that maybe he's gay and he won't be marrying a woman. I think on the other side you have Ilya, who doesn't know this conversation is happening at all, right? Like he's none the wiser. And in fact, towards the end of the chapter, he says he wondered if Rose Landry would be accompanying Shane to everything from now on. Maybe they would get married.
Yeah.
And you so see this in the next chapter. So when we go to chapter 16, this is the Tampa scene, the bar scene, right?
Yes.
And you see this from Ilya. You see this, you know, as a reader, we're privy to the scenes that have happened that other characters don't know about. So, like, we're in on it. We have this insider knowledge, and we're waiting for Elia specifically here. Like, how is he going to react? What's his perception of this? What were your thoughts on chapter 16 and how that developed?
So first, this that what you're saying is really interesting because from Ilya's point of view, he's already thinking that Shane is gonna get there and he's gonna be engaged to this super Hollywood star, and he's already like heartbroken about that. On the other hand, Shane is like, nothing has happened. He's like, well, is Ilya gonna be like, are we gonna continue with our relation? Well, with our situationship, and he's like, no, I haven't been dating this super huge person that everybody knows about, and Ilya is. Of course, gonna be affected by it, but he's not. I mean,
No, he's
I don't.
unfazed in a way
Yeah,
because
yeah,
he's like, oh, it's business as usual. But
yeah.
you're
Like,
right. The way he
yeah.
comes into the scene, he's like, oh, how's it going?
Yeah, like he's like Shane thinks they left things in a weird way, but just in a weird way. No, like this like
Mm,
scenario changing way.
totally. And I think what I really appreciated from this chapter was I got the inner monologue from both Shane, but also more so from Ilya from reading the book than I did maybe in the TV show. What was your sort of position on that? Did you have another idea?
Well, in the TV show, we know that he is anxious to meet Shane again because the bar scene. That's what you get from all his movement and all his but now you when in the book you read the whole thing and you read that he's really interesting to know what happened with Rose. If are they still together? He saw what everybody else saw, that they were really good together because they had lots of chemistry as well. And but that's because they were like they started this really cool relationship that it's gonna end up being a really cool friendship. And of course, he picked on that, but he wanted to know how far they went.
Absolutely, because and one thing I didn't realize as well whilst I was reading this was, Rachel Reed writes Ilya hadn't texted Hollander in over 2 months. Like they didn't even text in the time that Shane was dating Rose. Like complete cutoff. So they've gone from, like you said before, the situationship to then texting and then sexting and then hooking up whenever they could to going cold turkey. There was no communication whatsoever.
Exactly.
So Elia is almost this, I feel, this island on his own with all these thoughts like Shane's gonna get engaged to Rose. That's it. Like this is done. Like and
This
he
is the
doesn't
end.
exactly and he doesn't even know that Shane is having this realization and this conversation with Rose that is going to sort of propel the next sort of part of the storyline.
Yeah, it's amazing how they. I mean, I guess this can happen a lot with male characters, or like that they repressed their feelings a lot, like because this is what he's done. He's been for 2 months repressing the heartbreak and how he's feeling that, and I don't know how he can do it because they continue playing hockey, they continue scoring goals and doing everything. I guess it's this compartmentalization that they can do,
Yeah.
like where they are on the ice, they perform no matter what is happening with their like personal life.
Actually, that's such a good point. I would have really liked to know how Elia was coping, not just a line that says he hadn't texted Hollander in over 2 months. because there is a male female stereotype that plays in here, right? I know you talked about like a male character might sort of, immerse himself into the work or into the hockey. And I
Yeah.
can almost imagine a female character in a romance book then sort of talking to other characters or other females in the book, really pouring her heart out in a way. And that's just the stereotypical Hollywood kind of thing that you sort of imagine happening.
Yeah.
But I wonder how much of that really reflects real life, like from your friends around you and growing up. Like, how much did you talk to your friends after a heartbreak versus maybe a male might have?
I mean, I would talk to my heart's content, no, with all my friends, like especially my female friends. They are such a support for me in like this in difficult, and especially on a breakup. And I don't understand how he does it in this particular case, because Ilya doesn't have, in the books, he doesn't have friends that he would talk about this, and he doesn't have family. I guess the part where he's really well, he's an athlete and he does lots of training and exercise, which I guess that's really good for him. And at this point is what he is keeping him sane, I would think. But at some point, I bet this would like mm,
Have
I
an
don't know.
impact?
Hey, you have an impact, yes, for sure.
Yeah, that makes
This
sense.
is really taxing for anybody.
Yeah. And I think what I do appreciate in this scene in the TV show is Connor Story's acting in the scene is like off the charts amazing. There are these micro moments that Connor
Yeah.
does with his face. I think he says something like God or something like that, but under his breath that you just see. And there's like this gulp with his throat that he does in the scene. And it really elevates the scene for me because I wouldn't have gotten that from the book alone. I think the
No, for sure.
acting really elevates it here.
Totally. Yeah. Definitely. So he doesn't say a word, but I mean, he moves his lips, but he doesn't really talk, and you can tell what he's feeling in that particular moment for sure. It's
Definitely. I mean,
amazing.
right? And you're right, he doesn't really say much. He has this thought about Ilya has this thought and he says, Christ, he looks so fucking good. And he does, and I think the TV show really shows like he looks good, right? Like he's made an effort. And you see this juxtaposition as in a very similar way that the TV show does, where Ilya's wearing this hideous palm tree shirt.
Yeah.
Let's be honest.
Like,
Like, I mean,
easy
you could
can
tell he
work.
picked that out for himself.
Yeah, definitely. There wasn't a stylist involved.
Right. And I think I liked about having the words written down in the book was Elia is fishing. Like he's looking for the information. He's asking Shane for the information, but in a very non-direct way, which we know Shane does not respond to. Shane needs
Yeah.
direct questions. So Ilya's like, did you bring anyone with you? Shane shakes his hand. No, I mean, my parents thought about it. And he goes on about his parents. It's like, that is not what the boy is asking, Shane. That's not what he's wanting.
No.
And then he asks, like, oh, Rose Landry must be busy filming somewhere. Like, like, there's this. It's almost like Ilya is in a desert and Shane is a cup of water. And he
Yeah.
wants to drink it, but he has to get to it and he has to be given the water.
Yeah. Totally. Poor boy.
I mean, he's really putting him, through his paces. I don't know what you think, but I think Shane, on some level, knows that what I feel like Shane is playing as well with Ilya. And I wanted to ask you, as somebody who speaks multiple languages, so can you just tell us what languages you do speak, Alicia?
Well, I only speak two languages, which is not a lot. So I speak Spanish as is my mother tongue. And then I speak English as a second language. And because, as we said, I'm a scientist, most of our work is in English. So we read our papers in English, we give seminars in English, all the conferences are in English. So I use it mostly for science.
Yeah.
And I love reading in English too.
Yeah. And I
Like
definitely want to ask
literature.
you about what it's like reading English. But when we get to the point in the chapter where Shane says, we just weren't compatible. Now, as somebody who speaks a second language, if you didn't know what compatible meant, how would you have taken that from Shane?
It's funny because I was gonna tell you that compatible, like when you read it and when you say it in English, is really similar in Spanish. Compatible, which is exactly the same word written word by word. So I don't know anything about Russian. I guess it doesn't have the same root, so probably it's completely different in Russian, and that's why he has to check it. I would have said compatible, and I would have asked for a different way of saying it, a synonym or something. But yeah, I mean, I would have got it like right
You would have
away.
gotten it straight away. And can I
Yeah.
ask, because you talked about sort of you teach in English and in Spanish. Now,
Mhm.
what was it like for you reading the books? Did you read the English version or the Spanish version?
I read the English versions.
Interesting. So, was that a conscious decision of yours to only read the English version?
So the thing is, I lived in the States for 4 years, and when I moved to Spain, I was like, I'm gonna start reading literature in English because I'm gonna forget the language, especially like the daily language, not the one that I speak in the lab. So I started reading books in English, and I kept doing it. That's one thing. Then the other thing is that Rachel Reed's books are not translated, all of them, to Spanish yet. So they
Oh,
are, I think, they have translated the first three. In any case, if a book is written in English originally, I always read them in English because I don't want like a translation second hand. I don't know how to say it.
yeah.
Book. I do the same with the like textbooks. If they are written in English, I read them in English. So, but these particular books that are like really sexy, and this has they have these hot scenes. I don't know how would that be in Spanish. I don't know if I could read them like in Spanish, like I read them in English. So this is interesting, and I might take a look at them in Spanish in a library or something at some point to see how they translate them, because it's I'm really intrigued by how the translations are.
Yeah. And are you saying that the spicier scenes or the sex scenes might not have
Yeah.
like a direct translation or words
No,
directly in Spanish? Or,
I, no. What I'm saying is I don't really know if the translations are going. No, not the translations. Sorry, is reading these spicy scenes in Spanish. How are they gonna feel? Like, wow, this sounds like when he says something. I don't know. I don't have an example right now, but
yeah.
that translated to Spanish, I'm gonna be like, this is gross. I don't know if I'm gonna say that. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's like a second language is always something detached from your like from I don't know. No, not your feelings, because I read a lot in English, but I'm intrigued about how am I going to react to these scenes written in Spanish.
I think that's a really good point, and I'd really like to hear from some of our other listeners who maybe English is their second language, but they've chosen to read the Rachel Reed books in English. And as you were talking there, Alicia, I was thinking about what Ilya's experience must have been. So you're saying that when you read in English, you have an English sort of stream that you sort
Yeah.
of in your sort of reading and thinking in English. Whereas when you're reading in Spanish, that's completely separate. You're not having to translate between the two.
Yeah, that's how it works. So what I was thinking every time that I read, yes, every time that I read that Elia is translating from Russian to English, I've read that in the books. I don't think that's the case, because when you learn a second language and in the particular case of Elia, he learned them when he was 17 years old. So he's not translating for sure. He's using the vocabulary that he has. And probably we are talking about an athlete that for sure doesn't read the New Yorker. He doesn't have a super huge vocabulary because he's just learning the stuff that he listened in the locker room, etc. But for sure, even though he might not have a huge vocabulary, he's not translating. He's just using what he knows and the words that he knows. And in that sense, what you do is you try to construct the phrases as best as you can with what you got. And that's it. So, yeah, that was
And
my
do you
point.
think him coming to America, I think it's like 17 or something like that, that he comes to America, would have had an impact in how he's absorbing the language and how then he uses it?
Yeah, I'm not an expert on languages, but I moved to the States when I was 23 and I still have a really strong accent. So I know when you are 23 and you learn a second language, you don't lose the accent. But for example, my brother, well, he moved when he was 15 years old and he has way less accent than I do. So that for sure makes me think that Ilya, 13 years, he speaks really fluent English, albeit he might have a strong accent still because he's 17. But yeah, for sure he has lots of vocabulary and yeah.
Yeah, and how important is it, I'm wondering then, to have this depiction of an immigrant, as you said, who's come from Russia to America, who retains his accent because he's immersed in a different country rather, and also a very different culture. Like, I don't have any Russian friends. I've never been to Russia, so I can't speak to that experience. I have been to the States, and even the States to the UK, it's such a different culture. It's very,
Yeah.
very different.
Yeah. This is worlds apart from Russia for sure. I haven't been to Russia, but I have had Russian lab mates, and I think they are culturally more similar to Mediterranean. Well, I don't really know. It's what I'm saying is that they have a really strong culture and they are really close to their families, to their traditions, to their culture in general, to their food. And this, for a 70-year-old kid, must have been really difficult for sure. And he was in an environment where he couldn't like been enjoying like Russian stuff. He had to work, he had to play hockey, and he couldn't do much more than that. So that was probably like really difficult for him.
Yeah, it feels really jarring. I can only imagine what that's like. And to me, it would be like I've been cut off from a huge part of who I am. Like you talked about the food. Food is so important to culture,
Yeah,
right? Like
exactly.
yes, I grew up in Europe, and that's where I am, and I've lived, and I'm in the UK now, and but I grew up in an Indian family, and if you know any Indians, like food is
Yeah,
huge,
he's
right?
center. Yeah. I think it's the same for Russians, and they are not that different to like a Russian family is not that different to a Indian family or a Spanish family in terms of their traditions and their food, and that for sure for a kid like Ilya, a 70-year-old kid that is like extracted from that, put into a totally different culture. That was for sure really, really stressful.
Yeah, because he doesn't have the comforts. He doesn't have maybe the foods or the family around him. Or I don't know if there are any other Russian plays. I can't remember any other Russian plays being talked about in the first two books. But he doesn't have that connection. It's almost like he's cut off. And I know Rachel Reed writes about him going back every summer. But the impression I get from those sections is that he doesn't look forward to going back because of what home is now. With his father being ill and his brother and all the difficulties there. So going home isn't, to me, it doesn't feel like it's something that he necessarily might look forward to. It's just something that he does,
Yeah,
like
I
an
mean,
obligation.
yeah, in the book he says, I love my country, but I don't want to be there because of what I think since from the point of view of an immigrant like myself who has a difficult relationship with their country, because my country is also beautiful and we have an amazing culture, but also has struggles, really complicated. So I understand him 100%. So you love your culture, you love your country, but you don't want to be there, and that's what he feels. And in his case in particular, he doesn't feel welcome
Mm.
because of the homophobic culture or rules that they have there. So yeah,
Mm.
that's for sure.
I think I've so appreciated having this conversation with you because essentially we are both immigrants, so we can speak to that experience. Because we're having this conversation, it's really highlighting for me that Rachel Reed, or at least in the books, and I don't know about the TV show, I haven't really thought about this. I'm sort of thinking aloud here. They don't talk about the immigrant experience a lot or enough.
No,
I think
no,
they could have. Yeah, what are your thoughts?
no. I think, well, I understand. I guess she doesn't go into details in all the things because I don't know. She
It's
probably
not her
doesn't know the
experience.
experience. Yeah, exactly. So she cannot drive from that point of view. But it's way more difficult than what is put in the books, for sure.
Definitely, I think there's a lot there that could have been fleshed out. But even if we're thinking about Shane's character, being biracial in both the TV show and the books, and I know the TV show talks a little bit more about it, I feel like, than the book does. But even so, there's this huge underlayer of Shane's, you know, Japanese and American heritage that feels very unspoken or untapped. There's so much more that could have been explored.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. In the book, they don't talk at all about that. She doesn't talk about at all about that. In the TV show, a little bit more. And I think it's, well, I don't know why, but I think it's really a minority of people that are not white playing hockey in the North American leagues. I think that, so that's why they talk about that in the TV show, that a Japanese background kid or an Asian background kid is something really special. Because actually there are more Russians and more Europeans in the league than for sure an Asian kid.
Yeah, you're right. But I guess in that way, where a Russian or an Eastern European player might be very white passing,
Yeah, exactly.
in comparison to someone who's from a Japanese or an Asian sort of descent or heritage.
I was saying that he probably learns English really well and he speaks a lot, like he speaks well, but he's not in a university, he's not studying a degree, he's playing hockey and he's talking to other athletes that probably don't have a huge vocabulary, even though they are from Canada or the US. So I don't think he has enough vocabulary for expressing his feelings. Okay. And that's why, and Shane picks on that because he says English is too difficult right now. Difficult. English is too difficult right now because he's been with his family for a week, probably, or a few days. And all these emotions are in his tongue language. And he needs to say that in his tongue languages because he's feeling them in Russian. And that's for sure something important to highlight.
I completely agree. And I think we're going to see this in the next chapter where, we find out about Ilya's father's death and we get sort of his experience of being back in Russia and the funeral and things like that. But I think that's going to have to wait for another episode, I think. Alicia, what do you think?
Yeah, yeah,
I
that's
mean,
fine.
I think where we finish off in this chapter is, like you said earlier, they're both on the beach. And there's
They were.
this really tender moment where Elia moves his hand towards Shane and he hooks their thumbs together.
Yeah,
And
so
it's just
romantic.
so right.
Yeah, completely.
And
I
you can,
I wanted I wanted them to stay there for a while.
I think we all do. I think we want to almost like capture and freeze that moment for a little bit longer because we know what's going to come next. And it's
Yeah,
not going to be happy.
yeah, totally. And actually, yes, I
Yeah.
think. their time in the hotel room in the book is longer. They talk more. They start talking about his mother, the cross that he's has, and
Mm.
I like how it's in the book better than actually in the TV show.
Yeah, that's such a good point.
Hmm.
Really good point. Because there is more. There's just the book will give you more, right? Because you can understand their inner
Yeah,
thoughts in a
yeah.
way that you might not in a TV show. That's such a good point. So I think we're going to stop there before we get to chapter 17. So I know we've only covered two chapters in our conversation, Alicia, but I think they've been really heavy chapters. There's a lot going in there. And I've so appreciated having this conversation about being an immigrant and that experience. And I think you were the best person to have on to speak about that.
Thank you. No, thank you so much for having me. This has been such a thrill.
Oh, thank you. And Alicia, if people want to get in contact with you, if they want to share any ideas that they might have, where can people find you on socials?
So my Instagram, I only use Instagram. It's mi vida naranja, which is Spanish. My life in orange. And yeah, you can find me there for sure.
I'll make sure to sort of link you and tag you in the descriptions for your socials. But
Great.
thank you so much for joining me, Alicia. I wonder if before we leave, if you have a message for our Spanish listeners who are maybe reading the book or watching the TV show.
Well, the loons, no, the Spanish loons. Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know if there are many. I have few friends who share with me this passion, but yeah, I hope so. I am encourage any Spanish speaker to watch the TV show in the original version, and then read the books either way in Spanish or English. They are really really good.
¿Y tienes algún mensaje para nuestros fans en español?
Bueno, pues que, que que os sigan acompañando el podcast y que sigan disfrutando de este universo de hockey y romance.
Muchas gracias.
No, gracias a ti.